My name is Harper Matthews. I'm 28, and tonight I stood frozen in the middle of the Rosewood Hotel ballroom surrounded by Boston's most elite, while security moved toward me. I didn't say a word. I couldn't. Not when Elaine, my stepmother, was smiling like the queen of her little kingdom, and not when her voice rang out for everyone to hear, "You're just a waitress." She laughed loud enough to hush the string quartet. There was no misunderstanding, no grace, just cruelty wrapped in diamonds. The only thing they didn't know was that my husband, the man secretly funding this entire event, was about to walk through those very same ballroom doors. But to understand how we got here, I need to take you back. Back to when I still thought family meant something. I was born to Thomas and Rachel Matthews, picture perfect on the outside. Dad built his own investment firm, a quiet empire serving Boston's wealthy. Mom, she was his partner in every sense. Charity work, social events, organizing galas. She was the emotional glue in our perfect little world. Until I turned 8. That's when everything cracked. Mom was diagnosed with aggressive breast cancer. It came fast, cruel, and irreversible. Within 6 months, she was gone. And when she left, she took the light in our home with her. My dad changed. He didn't know how to grieve, so he buried himself in his firm. Long hours, long silences. And me, I was left in the care of rotating nannies. Some were kind, some were distracted. None were her. I remember sitting in the bay window of my room one evening waiting for him to come home. He was 2 hours late. When he finally walked in briefcase in one hand, phone in the other, I ran to him. I was 10. Desperate. He kissed my head absent-mindedly and said, "Sorry, honey, late meeting." That was it. That was all I got. That winter, Elaine Parker arrived. She was poised, elegant, stunning. She'd met Dad at a charity fundraiser for a cancer research initiative. Of course. What else? At first, I was intrigued. She smiled at me like she saw me. She brought gifts, asked questions, even helped with a school project on ecosystems. I remember her gluing fake moss onto a poster board and saying, "We're going to be a family Harper." It felt good, for about a month. Then she and her daughter Madison moved in. Madison was exactly my age 10, but we couldn't have been more different. She was polished, polite, and she had Elaine's talent for attention. I was quieter. I liked to draw. I spent hours lost in art books, hiding in corners of our estate with pencils and markers, and the sense I didn't quite belong. The favoritism started slowly. Madison got the bigger bedroom. She got more presents at Christmas. When I asked why, I was told Madison's just been through a lot. Be kind, Harper. Then Elaine started moving things around. Harper, use the guest bathroom, please. Madison needs privacy. Harper, Madison has writing lessons. We'll have to hold off on those art supplies. At first, I tried to be patient, tried to win her over, but every time I spoke up, it backfired. Elaine would sigh dramatically and say to my dad, "I'm trying so hard, Thomas," but she just shuts me out. He never questioned it. He was tired, numb. He just nodded as if parenting me had become one more item on his overflowing to-do list. By the time I was 14, the message was clear. I was a guest in my own home. Madison got shopping trips, ski vacations, weekend getaways. I got library shifts, art club, and leftover attention. If I asked for anything, it had to go through Elaine first. And somehow, it was always not a good time. What hurt most wasn't Elaine's manipulation. It was Dad's slow disappearance. But there were rare moments, tiny cracks, where the man I remembered still flickered. My high school art exhibit, junior year. Elaine and Madison didn't come. Of course not, but Dad did. He walked into that modest little school auditorium in a gray overcoat and looked around like he didn't quite know how he'd ended up there. But when he saw my paintings, he stopped. He stared for a long time. Then he turned to me and said quietly, "You have your mother's talent." And for a second, I had my dad back. But those moments weren't enough. After I went off to college, the distance between us grew even more. I barely came home. When I did, I felt like a stranger. Elaine had redecorated everything. My room was a guest suite. My childhood drawings were gone. Then came the summer after my freshman year. My phone rang at 3 a.m. Dad had a heart attack in his office. Massive. Sudden. By the time I got to the hospital, it was too late. He was gone. And I wasn't even allowed to say goodbye. The funeral was a blur. Black coats, cold air, condolences from people I didn't know. Elaine stood at the front hand in Madison's tears that never quite reached her eyes. I sat 3 rows back. No one saved me a seat, but the real betrayal came 2 weeks later at the reading of the will. I still remember the scent of the lawyer's office, faintly lemon-scented wood polish and old paper. My father's will was neatly typed, bound, and cold. Elaine sat with perfect posture, one manicured hand resting on Madison's. I sat alone. The reading was swift. Elaine received the majority of my father's estate, his business shares, properties investments. Madison got a trust fund and a beach house on Martha's Vineyard, and me, just enough money to cover the rest of my college tuition, and a modest inheritance that wouldn't even last a year. When I asked about the discrepancy, Elaine tilted her head with faux sympathy and said, "Your father wanted you to understand the value of hard work. And Madison. She has different needs." That was the day I learned I wasn't just overlooked, I was strategically removed. A week later, I was packing up my childhood room, what was left of it, into 2 suitcases. Elaine leaned against the doorway like she was supervising housekeeping. "You're an adult now, Harper," she said, her voice sugar-coated poison. "It's time you find your own way." Madison stood behind her, arms crossed, lips curled into a victorious smirk. "Oh, and don't worry about the holidays," she added. "Our traditions are evolving." I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I just nodded. Because somewhere deep down, I knew there was no winning with them. The following years were a blur of survival. I couch-surfed at first, then managed to rent a tiny studio apartment off campus. I worked at the campus library, then a local art supply store. Every dollar went toward rent, food, and paints. No birthday calls, no care packages, no "how are you" texts. Elaine and Madison sent the occasional generic holiday card, probably to maintain appearances for the social circle. But there was no warmth, no sincerity. I poured myself into my art and my work, not because I was chasing greatness, but because it was the only space where I still felt like me. After graduating with honors, I landed a job at Westfield Gallery, a boutique art space in Boston that specialized in emerging artists. The pay wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. I had my own key, my own schedule, my own future. I found peace in the simple routines, unwrapping new canvases, curating pieces, coaching nervous young painters before their first exhibit. And I vowed never to need Elaine or Madison or anyone like them again. I built a small circle of friends. We met at hole-in-the-wall diners, danced to throwback playlists, cried over breakups and cheap wine. None of them knew my family history. None of them had to. For the first time in years, I felt safe. Then, he walked in. It was a rainy Tuesday in April. The gallery was quiet. I was rearranging a shipment of abstract sculptures, trying to dry them before the humidity warped the base plates. That's when I saw him. Tall, damp hair clinging to his forehead, wearing a casual button-down shirt and worn jeans. He looked at the art like he was trying to hear it speak. "Can I help you find anything specific?" I asked, brushing a strand of hair from my face. He turned, smiled, a real smile, one that crinkled at the corners. "I'm just browsing," he said, "though I'm curious about this artist." He gestured to a canvas titled Urban Silence. "That's Lucia Mendes," I said. "Her work explores emotional isolation in city life. See the way she uses negative space." He nodded, intrigued. "Feels like she's saying more with what she's not showing." We spent an hour wandering the gallery together, trading interpretations and stories. He asked thoughtful questions. He actually listened. He wasn't trying to impress me. He wasn't trying to judge me. He was just present. As he was leaving, he handed me a business card. "I'd love to talk more about ways I can support some of these artists," he said. I glanced at the card. Nathan Reed, founder and CEO, Reed Innovations. My throat tightened. Nathan Reed. as in the Nathan Reed Tech Entrepreneur Investor, and according to Forbes, one of the most influential people under 35. But that afternoon, he was just a guy in a soaked shirt who liked abstract art and didn't make me feel small. Our coffee meeting the next week turned into dinner. Dinner turned into weekends. He didn't flaunt his wealth. In fact, he downplayed it. When I asked why he still lived in a modest townhouse, he said, "Money complicates things. I've seen people lose themselves in it. I don't want to be that guy." 3 months in, we were sitting on his rooftop one evening. The sky was painted in soft oranges. The city buzzed below. He looked at me, careful and kind. "You never talk about your family," he said gently. I hesitated. Then I told him everything. The mother I lost too soon. The father I lost piece by piece. Elaine's manipulation. Madison's mockery. The will. The exile. Tears slid down my cheeks before I even realized I was crying. The hardest part wasn't the money, I said. It was knowing my dad died thinking I didn't need him. Nathan didn't speak right away. He just reached for my hand. Then he said, "They failed you, Harper, not the other way around." And for the first time in my life, I believed it. Nathan never tried to fix what I told him. He didn't say things like, "I'm sure they meant well," or "maybe one day you'll reconnect." He just listened and held space for me. That was more healing than any apology Elaine or Madison could have ever given. As our relationship deepened, Nathan stayed true to his word. No pressure, no family reunions. He introduced me to his parents, 2 retired teachers from Seattle, who welcomed me like a second daughter, and his sister Lily, an environmental lawyer who made me laugh so hard I cried the first night we met. That was the thing about Nathan's family. They showed up not with obligations or expectations, but with kindness. Uncomplicated, unconditional, rare. One weekend, while walking barefoot on the beaches of Provincetown, Nathan stopped mid-sentence. He took both of my hands. "I love you," he said, "for your compassion, your strength, and your ability to see beauty in places others overlook. You've changed how I see the world, Harper. Will you marry me?" There wasn't a crowd, no camera, no fireworks, just the ocean, just us. And that was perfect. We married 2 months later in a small ceremony in Nathan's parents' backyard. 30 people, no drama, no Matthews. It wasn't about hiding, it was about protecting what we had built. I didn't want Elaine or Madison near anything I cared about, and they had no idea I was married, let alone married to someone like Nathan. I didn't post on social media. I didn't send announcements, because to them, I was irrelevant, and to me, they were just noise. Nathan and I moved into a cozy brownstone in Brooklyn, blending art and tech in our daily lives. He worked on education access projects. I poured myself into curating therapeutic art programs for children recovering from trauma. For 2 years, we lived in a bubble of peace, of quiet joy. Then one Tuesday afternoon it arrived, a cream-colored envelope, elegant, embossed, familiar. The return address, the Matthews Family Foundation. My heart dropped. Inside was an invitation to the annual Boston Children's Hospital Benefit Gala, hosted by Elaine Matthews. Paperclipped to the card was a handwritten note. "Harper, it's been too long. We should reconnect. The family misses you. Elaine." I stared at it for a long time. The last time I'd heard from Elaine was a dry, impersonal Christmas card. She had never reached out, not when I graduated, not when I married, not when I moved back to the East Coast. And now, suddenly, the family missed me. Nathan came home that evening to find me sitting at the kitchen island, the invitation spread out like evidence at a trial. "What's that?" he asked, pausing mid-kiss when he saw my face. "My stepmother," I replied. "She's decided I exist again." He read the invitation, then blinked. "The Boston Children's Gala." He trailed off, what I asked narrowing my eyes. "That's awkward," he said slowly. "The Reed Foundation is the primary donor this year." I blinked. "Wait." What he nodded. "We sponsor it annually. I didn't realize Elaine Matthews was running it. The team handles the details. I only approve major initiatives." I stared at him stunned. So let me get this straight. My estranged stepmother had invited me to a gala she was chairing. Funded by my husband's foundation, you think she knows I asked? Nathan shrugged. Probably not. Our involvement was anonymous. The coincidence felt too strategic to be pure accident. She must have found out about us. Someone must have told her we got married, I said. Maybe he replied. But that's not the point. What is the point? I asked, dreading the answer. Nathan leaned against the counter, calm, thoughtful. What if we went? I stared at him like he'd suggested we vacation on a live volcano. Why would I walk into a room full of people who pretended I didn't exist for a decade? Because you're not that girl anymore, he said. You don't need them. You're successful. You're respected. And maybe, just maybe, facing them on your own terms gives you the closure they'll never hand you. I opened my mouth to protest, but I paused, because he wasn't wrong. There was a part of me that still carried their rejection, that still wondered even after all this time if I was really enough. If I went, it wouldn't be for them, it would be for me. In the weeks leading up to the gala, I flitted between anxiety and defiance. I selected a midnight blue gown from a local designer the gallery worked with. It fit like confidence. Understated, elegant, and nothing Elaine would ever pick. Nathan helped me prepare emotionally more than anything. If at any point you want to leave, he said the night before, just text me. I'll drop everything. You don't have to prove anything. I nodded. But the truth was, I wasn't going for revenge. I was going to reclaim something. The Rosewood Hotel glowed with chandeliers and old money when I arrived at 7:00 sharp. I gave my name Harper Reed to the woman at the check-in table. She smiled, handed me a gold-trimmed place card, and welcomed me in. The ballroom was full already. Familiar faces from my childhood circled the silent auction tables. My father's cousin, Patricia, was the first to recognize me. Harper Matthews, she gasped. It's Harper Reed now, I replied softly. She looked me up and down. Well, you've grown up. Understatement of the year. She directed me toward Elaine, who was holding court at the center of the room with Madison and a cluster of board members. I took a deep breath, collected a glass of champagne from a passing waiter, smoothed the hem of my dress, and walked straight into the lion's den. I saw them before they saw me. Elaine, flawless in a champagne satin gown, smiled like a practiced politician. Her blonde hair was swept into an elegant twist, every movement calculated. Beside her stood Madison, 28 like me, but she looked 10 years younger. Red dress, glass skin, a diamond tennis bracelet I was sure hadn't been earned. I approached calmly, posture straight, chin high. Madison saw me first. Her eyebrows climbed skyward. She leaned toward Elaine and whispered something that made both of them freeze. Elaine turned. Harper, she said, her voice carrying across the room laced with artificial delight. What a surprise. I smiled politely. You sent an invitation. Did I? She asked, laughing lightly. Well, I suppose we had a long guest list. So many details to manage. I wanted to laugh too, but I didn't. I wouldn't miss it, I said. The Children's Hospital is such a worthy cause. Madison's gaze raked over my dress. Interesting choice, she said. Is that off the rack? It's from an emerging designer we represent at the gallery, I replied. Oh, you're still at that little art shop, Elaine asked, feigning surprise. How persistent of you. I kept my voice steady. I'm the assistant director now. We've expanded into therapeutic art programming for trauma recovery. Before either of them could respond, a hospital board member wandered over. You work in the arts, he asked, genuinely curious. I opened my mouth, but Elaine beat me to it. Harper has always had creative aspirations, she said. Nothing serious, of course. I clenched my jaw. Then I spoke louder this time. I help run one of the most respected emerging artist galleries in Boston. We partner with children's hospitals and shelters. We're doing serious work. Elaine blinked, then turned to the board member, smoothly changing the subject. I stepped back, dismissed. Madison followed. Seriously, Harper, she said in a low voice. Why are you here? I met her gaze. Then why invite me? Mom thought it would be proper, she said. Anniversary of your dad's death coming up. She didn't think you'd actually show, especially alone. I took a slow sip of champagne. I'm not alone. My husband is joining me soon. Madison's mouth twitched. You're married. You'll meet him soon. Before she could respond, Uncle William and Aunt Susan arrived in a flurry of fake excitement. Is that little Harper? William boomed. Thought you'd fallen off the planet. I forced a smile. Hello, Uncle William. Elaine says you've been so busy, Susan added. What on earth keeps you from staying connected with family? I shrugged. Life. Their smiles didn't reach their eyes. As we talked, more familiar faces started glancing my way. Whispers, double takes, speculation. Then Elaine moved. She walked to the band, leaned down, and whispered something. The music faded. She stepped onto the small stage, microphone in hand. Ladies and gentlemen, she said, thank you all for joining us tonight to support Boston Children's Hospital. The crowd applauded politely. I'd like to take a moment to recognize the incredible team making this evening possible, our planners, caterers, and serving staff. More applause. Then she smiled and her eyes found me. In fact, she continued, it seems one of our waitstaff may have misplaced her uniform this evening. Laughter. I stood, frozen, heart-pounding. Harper, dear, Elaine said, did you get confused about your role tonight? Serving staff aren't usually seated during dinner service. More laughter, louder this time. Madison stepped forward, phone in hand, recording. Maybe Harper just wanted to see how the other half lives, she said. It hit me then this was planned. Not a reunion, a spectacle. Elaine smiled sweetly. Security. A man in a dark suit near the entrance began walking toward me. I held my ground. A voice behind me called out, always trying to be something she's not. Some things never change. Brandon, my cousin. More laughter, more whispers. The security guard arrived. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to come with me. I was invited, I said, voice small but defiant. The invitation is in my clutch. Elaine walked over. I think Harper misunderstood. It was a courtesy copy, not an actual invite. That's not what your note said, I replied. Must have been a mistake, she said, turning to the guard. Please escort her out gently. She is family, after all. Technically, Madison added, still filming, this'll make a great reel. Estranged daughter crashes gala. Don't worry, Brandon said. We'll call it performance art. Tears pricked my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. As the guard reached for my elbow, I clutched my clutch tighter. Please just let me wait for my husband. Elaine laughed. No need to invent a spouse, Harper. She's lying, Madison said. I checked her socials, nothing but sad little gallery posts. I looked around. Cousins, uncles, old family friends. Not one stood up for me. Elaine waved her hand. Michael, please. Let's not waste more time. As the guard gently nudged me toward the door, Elaine's voice followed. Some people just don't belong in certain circles, no matter how hard they try. I walked toward the exit, back straight, shoulders tall, until the ballroom doors swung open, and in walked Nathan Reed. The ballroom doors opened like something out of a dream, except this time I wasn't dreaming, I was trembling. Nathan stepped into the room like he owned the air. He wore a deep navy tuxedo, perfectly tailored, hair neatly combed back. His presence made heads turn even before they realized who he was. At 6'2", broad-shouldered and calm as ever, Nathan didn't just walk in, he commanded the space. His eyes swept the room, then landed on me. Me standing near the door, flanked by a nervous security guard surrounded by raised phones and relatives who had just finished tearing me down. Harper Nathan said, his voice cutting through the ballroom like a blade through silk. The whispers started immediately. Is that? No, it couldn't be. That's Nathan Reed, right? Nathan walked toward me, each step deliberate, and the crowd parted, like they felt the shift coming. He didn't stop until he reached me and took my hands in his. What happened? He asked, his voice low but steady. Before I could answer, Elaine stepped forward with her signature smile locked in place. "Mr. Reed," she said, eyes wide. "What an honor to have you here. I don't believe we've met Elaine Matthews, chair of the foundation, hosting tonight's gala." Nathan turned to her, expression unreadable, voice smooth. "Mrs. Matthews," he said. "Yes, I know exactly who you are." Something in his tone made Elaine pause just for a second. "Well, we're so pleased you could join us," though she added with a light chuckle. "We were just resolving a bit of confusion. You know how chaotic these events can be, too many names on the guest list." "Right," Nathan said. "That's what I'm trying to understand." He turned toward the security guard. "My wife appears to be surrounded by people filming her and being escorted from the event you're hosting. That's the situation I walked into." He emphasized it. "My wife." And just like that, the room stopped breathing. Phones slowly lowered, glances were exchanged. Madison's mouth fell open. Elaine's eyes darted to me, then back to Nathan. "I'm sorry, did you say—" Wife Nathan didn't flinch. "We've been married for 2 years. Madison let out a sound somewhere between a gasp and a cough. Elaine blinked hard. "There must be some mistake. Harper is my stepdaughter, but Nathan cut her off. I know who she is. The question is, do you?" The words hung in the air. Heavy. Unequivocal. Brandon suddenly stepped forward, trying to salvage something. "Nathan is it. You've done very well for yourself. We've been following your success." Nathan didn't even blink. "You've followed me, but ignored Harper." "That's interesting." Brandon's hand dropped awkwardly. Elaine tried again. "This is clearly a misunderstanding. Harper is, of course, a cherished part of the family. We just didn't know she'd married someone so—" Valuable Nathan finished raising an eyebrow. "Because let's be honest, that's what this is really about, isn't it?" He stepped forward just slightly. "You only care now because of me. Because my name, my money, and my reputation are suddenly attached to the girl you've treated like an afterthought for over a decade." No one dared interrupt. The silence was complete. Harper kept her maiden name professionally, Nathan added. "Not because she was ashamed, but because she didn't want to ride my coattails. She never needed my name to shine." Madison finally found her voice, though it trembled now. "Harper, you should have said something. You mean, after you filmed me being humiliated," I asked, my voice returning. "After you stood by while your mother called security on me." Madison flushed eyes dropping to the phone, still in her hand. Nathan noticed. "Interesting that you were filming," he said coolly. "Did you think this would go viral? That shaming my wife would earn you influence points?" Elaine stepped in again. "Mr. Reed, surely you understand that family dynamics are complicated." And yet Nathan said, folding his arms, "Compassion isn't." More murmurs. The room was shifting. Nathan took a deep breath and addressed the entire crowd. "For those who don't know me, I'm Nathan Reed, CEO of Reed Innovations and chair of the Reed Foundation." Gasps spread like wildfire. Elaine's knees visibly weakened. "And what most of you also don't know," he continued, "is that the Reed Foundation is the anonymous benefactor for tonight's event. We funded nearly 70% of the gala budget, including the new pediatric expansion wing being announced tonight." Whispers, gasps, a few audible "oh my gods." Elaine's face turned white. Nathan turned back to her. "Imagine my surprise when I learned the woman who invited my wife after years of estrangement did so only to humiliate her in front of Boston's elite. At an event my foundation quietly funded out of respect for this hospital." Elaine's lips parted, but no words came out. "That's not true," she whispered. "I heard everything Nathan said, as did half this room." He looked around. "And I think it's time we start holding people accountable, not just for how they treat the powerful, but how they treat those they think aren't." Elaine's smile had vanished. Her posture, so perfectly poised just moments before, now sagged beneath the weight of exposed truth. Around us, guests whispered in waves. Some were filming. Others were simply frozen glasses halfway to their lips, caught between discomfort and fascination. Madison stepped forward, eyes wide, voice syrupy sweet. "Harper, let's not do this here." I turned toward her. "Where was that sentiment 10 minutes ago when you were recording me being dragged out of the ballroom like a trespasser?" She flinched. You just enjoyed it," I said flatly. Nathan looked to me silently, asking if I wanted to keep going. I did. Not out of vengeance, but because I was done being polite for people who were never kind. Elaine finally found her voice. "Mr. Reed, surely you can understand. Family history is complicated. Harper has always been a challenge." Nathan cocked his head slightly. A challenge Elaine pressed on her tone tight. She pushed away every opportunity we gave her, refused to join family trips, declined every gesture. I stepped forward, my voice steady. "You mean the gestures where you gave Madison a car for graduation and handed me a bus pass?" Madison crossed her arms. "You wanted to be different. You always acted like you were better than us." "No," I said calmly. "I wanted to be seen. I wanted the same love and support you got without having to perform for it." Nathan turned back to the crowd. "I think what's clear," he said, "is that Harper wasn't discarded because she was difficult. She was discarded because she didn't conform to someone else's image of value." The air in the room crackled. A hospital board member in the crowd, Dr. Levine, stepped forward. "Mr. Reed, I had no idea this was happening," he said quietly. "If it had been brought to my attention, it was never supposed to be," I interrupted gently. "That's the thing about subtle erasure. It's done behind closed doors, inheritance terms, private texts, canceled holidays. You only saw the polished version." Dr. Levine looked uncomfortable, but he nodded. "I'm sorry," he said. "No one deserves that." Elaine tried once more to salvage her standing. "I think we should continue this discussion privately. This is a charity event." Nathan shook his head. "No, Elaine. What just happened was the event. You made it public. You turned it into a performance. And now the mask has cracked." He paused, then turned to the crowd again. "To clarify, while the Reed Foundation will continue to support the hospital, we'll be reevaluating all partnerships that involve the Matthews Family Foundation or anyone acting on its behalf." A visible ripple of shock moved through the room. Elaine's face drained completely. "You can't do that," she said, her voice rising. "We've chaired this gala for 15 years. The Matthews Foundation exists because of my father's work," I said, stepping in. "Work you cut me out of. The legacy you claimed as your own." Madison's voice was suddenly brittle. "So this is about revenge?" "No," I said slowly. "It's about accountability." More members of the hospital board were approaching now, not to side with Elaine, but to get ahead of the storm. One whispered to another, "We can't afford to lose the Reed Foundation. Not over this." Elaine heard it. She turned to me, eyes sharp, voice low. "You've made your point, Harper. Do you really want to destroy what's left of your family over some childish grudge?" I smiled. "You destroyed it when you made sure there was nothing left for me to come back to." Madison tried again, her tone turning pitiful. "Be reasonable, Harper. We're family." I stared at her for a moment, then said clearly, "No, we're not." The words sliced clean through the noise. Family shows up, family protects. Family doesn't treat you like a liability unless you're useful. What we were was legal, not emotional, not real. And I was finally ready to release that truth into the world. As Nathan and I began to walk toward our table, the one placed front and center for the event's primary donor, the whispers became louder. "Did you see Elaine's face?" Madison was recording her own downfall. They say Harper kept her name professionally smart. She didn't need his name to matter. Love that. We passed cousins, acquaintances, and socialites, each suddenly full of forced smiles and half-hearted greetings. I responded politely, but not warmly, because I wasn't here to reclaim a seat at their table. I was here to prove I didn't need one. Dinner resumed with strained civility. Elaine's speech, thanking the anonymous donor whose identity was now common knowledge, was brief and dry. She avoided eye contact. Nathan leaned toward me. "We can leave if you want. You've said everything that needed to be said. I shook my head. No, I want to stay. For once, I'm not the one who has to leave the room when they feel uncomfortable. He smiled. You're incredible. You know that. I laughed quietly. Better than a waitress uniform infinity better, he said, clinking his glass gently against mine. To my wife, he added, raising it in a private toast, who never needed a name to be powerful.